Hello and welcome to the news at 7, where we get to the heart of the day's stories and communities across Scotland tonight. More wildfires hit Scotland with extreme warnings in place across the country. Firefighters are tackling a number of blazes, including in Thurso, Peterhead and in North Lanarkshire. We will speak to an expert in fire science to find out why the wildfires are happening. Also tonight, what's been dubbed Scotland's Chernobyl is set to be redeveloped. Bulldozers move into the Clune Park housing estate in Port Glasgow. And we will have all the sport, as always, with Lewis. What have you got for us tonight, Lewis?
Well, Amy, what a weekend of football and rugby lies ahead, and of course in the golf too. It's cut day at the Masters. Can Robert McIntyre stick around for the weekend? We'll get you up to speed with the action from Augusta.
Let's hope he can. And later we will speak to the scientist developing a computer model which can think like someone who has been lost in the wilderness. Hello, I'm Amy Irons and welcome to the news at 7. Well, we start tonight with wildfires, and you might be wondering why there have been so many of them in recent weeks and what exactly is causing them, with extreme warnings in place for the whole of Scotland today and into tomorrow. Here are just some of the places where fires have broken out over the last few weeks. And today, crews have been tackling fires near Thurso, Peterhead, the Isle of Arran and in North Lanarkshire. We can have a look just here at some of the pictures. These are scenes from near Fannyside Loch, just outside Cumbernauld, where 6 engines have been on the scene to tackle the blaze, and some properties in the area were evacuated, including a dog kennel and a cattery. These are the latest examples and follow the situation last weekend in the Glentrool area of Galloway Forest Park, where campers had to be evacuated by emergency services. Meanwhile, these were the scenes here in the Kilpatrick Hills near Glasgow, where there have been 2 wildfires in recent weeks. So what is going on? Well, earlier I spoke to Rory Haddon, who's a professor of fire science, and asked him if there has been an increase in wildfires in Scotland.
It does seem that the consensus is building on the idea that we are getting more fires and they are becoming more intense, but it is still a very active area of research. But certainly, if other parts of the world, if we follow the same trends as there, then yes, we will be seeing more fires that are more intense.
And I'm going to assume that they start for a whole number of reasons, but what's the most... Is there a most common reason as to why we would see a wildfire start? Is it something that happens naturally? Is it human error? Is it malicious?
Most of this is human caused, and it could be malicious. We always see, every year there's a few malicious wildfires. But also, I think there's a lot of people who are, behaving, in a normal way, not deliberately setting out to start a fire, but perhaps just haven't been careful enough with the use of a barbecue or building a campfire or taking naked flames, out into the countryside with them. These things, the fires at this time of year, after this very long period of dry weather, you might think, oh, it's okay, I'm going to pay attention, I'm going to make sure that this doesn't get out of control. But really, if a fire does ignite on the vegetation, you've got very little time to react before that fire starts spreading and starts burning through relatively large areas of land.
And Professor Haddon, why are they so difficult to control? Why do we see wildfires spreading so quickly? Why is it so difficult for our fire service to be able to manage them?
Of course, we have the weather. That's a very short-term thing. We've had these few days or weeks now of very dry weather, but there are longer-term trends at play here as well. We're changing how we use the wildland in Scotland. There are efforts around rewilding, changes of land use, reduction in grazing, reduction in the number and types of animals that are in the countryside. And what that has meant is that in some areas, the amount of vegetation has increased. And more vegetation means there's more fuel for the fire to burn, and that creates, in some cases, a much more intense fire that becomes very difficult to fight.
Professor Rory Haddon chatting to me earlier. Well, it's been dubbed Scotland's Chernobyl, and following years of dispute between Inverclyde Council and private landlords, the derelict Clune Park housing estate in Port Glasgow is set to be redeveloped. Famed for its eerie ghost town-like appearance, the area was first built to house shipbuilders over 100 years ago. With a handful of tenants remaining, the bulldozers are now on site and demolition will start on about a third of the buildings. Hazel Martin spoke to the leader of the local authority.
The first phase comprises of the demolition of the former Clune Park Primary School and an adjacent church, and then we're demolishing I think about 15 of the tenement blocks in the first phase, and as we acquire the properties, and we'll demolish the rest of it on a phased basis. So we'll end up with a cleared site, and we're looking at bringing the Housing Association in to build somewhere in the region of 165 houses across the school site, the church site and the main site. That'll be funded by the Scottish Government, so it'll be new houses for social rent, which will be a big boost for the area.
Why wasn't refurbishment an option?
It may well have been cheaper to refurbish, but in the longer term it wasn't necessarily seen as value for money, and I suppose building new homes is that you can build homes for the future.
This is what used to be a community and you've been here a long time. How does it make you feel to see it like this?
It's sad. This is part of your history, your heritage. This estate has been here for generations, and ultimately when it's cleared and demolished, that history is gone, that physical history. But I think we can create a new neighbourhood here that will serve this community well for generations to come.
Some people do still live here. Yeah. What do you say to them?
I think ultimately at the end of the day it's better for everyone. That it's just not simply possible to remain living in the middle of this. So I'm sure that once they move out, they'll move into something better, and we can, as I said, build that new future for Clune Park.
Mm-hmm. And Clune Park in itself, I mean, it's become quite infamous. It's gained a bit of a cult following, if you like. Was that something that you were expecting? What do you make of that? In
Inverclyde, we've got good neighbourhoods, strong communities. We've got a lot going for us, and that international sort of reputation, that coverage, isn't good for the area because it creates a false impression of the area. So I'll be glad when the properties are demolished and we're no longer talking about Scotland's Chernobyl.
Now, if you've ever got lost while climbing a hill, there's some technology which could help save you. Scientists at the University of Glasgow are developing a computer model that can predict how someone who's gone off track might behave. The idea is it would second guess the decisions that they're likely to make with the aim of saving lives and the time of mountain rescue teams as well. Well, Jan-Hendrik Evers is leading the project and is with us in the studio. Jan-Hendrik, thanks so much for joining us tonight. So this computer manages to second guess how someone might behave in the wilderness. Can you explain how that works? Because I don't know if anyone could work out what I would do, for example.
So it doesn't really know what you're doing, but it can make good approximations, right? So we're working with aggregate data over thousands and tens of thousands of data points across the world, and we know roughly how different people will behave, right? So some, for example, like elder people behave differently from younger people. If you're fell running or hiking, you're behaving very differently. We know that, and we can make some statistical assumptions about this.
So give us an example then. You mentioned an elderly person there. How are you using this data to work out how a certain type of person might behave? Like, how would I behave in the wilderness, for example, do you think?
So if me and you were hiking, we'd probably behave pretty much the same way, right? We'd probably try to self-rescue, we'd try to head to a building or a road, whereas a younger person, someone potentially up to like 5 years old, might not have that knowledge about how to save themselves. So when someone gets missing, they obviously get reported missing. So, the search teams can make some assumptions about how we are going to behave then.
So is this based on data from people who have found themselves already off track? How have you actually managed to collate all of this?
So I personally haven't, and my team hasn't. There's some databases across the UK and in the whole world in general, and that the different mountain rescue teams have collected. So I haven't done much data gathering myself, but that's something that we're looking at to the future to maybe do some AI as well.
So is this all about as well saving time, I suppose, of the mountain rescue team? So it's almost like an aid, I'm guessing, in the same way that we're seeing AI, for example, making a difference when it comes to, like in football and tactics and that type of thing. So is it an aid to help mountain rescue teams?
Exactly. I mean, every minute saved is potentially a life saved. So that's what we're trying to work towards.
And what should people be doing when they are out and about? Is there anything, apart from obviously having this great data and this great computer that would help if they did get lost, are there things that you've learned just from your work that people should keep in mind? I mean, the obvious things like a map and a compass, that type of thing. I
mean, statistically speaking, the best thing to do is not to move.
Okay.
But if you do move, we'll try and find you.
Well, that is very reassuring. Jan-Hendrik Evers, thank you so much for joining us and best of luck with it. Sounds absolutely fascinating. Thanks for joining us on the programme. Now, a small Highland village is celebrating after going from having the slowest broadband speed in the country to one of Scotland's fastest. Falkirk and Caithness ranked the lowest in the whole of the UK back in 2023, leaving its 950 residents with an unstable connection and even impacting music at the local Highland dance school. But now, following an upgrade, the company that has installed it claims it can deliver speeds 3,000 times faster, as Chris McLennan reports.
It's a slower pace of life here in Caithness, pretty much matching the broadband speed, until now. 2 years ago, Falkirk had the worst broadband in the UK, with speeds at times failing to reach 3 megabits per second. But now, following an upgrade to fibre optic, people in the village can now expect speeds hundreds of times faster. Their new supercharged network is hoped to boost local businesses' capabilities to make stronger connections.
We do have a lot of businesses that use the hotel for meetings, etc. So to be able to know that we've set them up and that's it, like nothing's going to happen halfway through. And I think it will be a big selling point for people that are travelling. A lot of people forget that after Inverness there is life. So yeah, this just kind of brings us back up to speed and shows that there's a lot going on around here.
Streaming services are now a real possibility, which is music to the local dance pupils' ears.
Previously our broadband connection wasn't very stable. Obviously one of our essential pieces of kit that we need when we're teaching dancing is music, so it was never really all that reliable. Often I was streaming from my own hotspot off my own phone using my own data, and I've actually previously been known to take my Wi-Fi from my home up to the studio to use it to get a reliable connection.
People in rural areas, good connectivity brings remote working, online learning, access to digital health services. All of the things that people in urban areas are used to suddenly become available to people in rural communities.
But it's not like this everywhere. Delays to the rollout of fast broadband to other areas is still cause for concern.
This has taken far too long to get to this stage. We have had promise after promise after promise that we would have super fast broadband rolled out. We know the R100 programme that the Scottish Government were heavily involved in has been beset with delays. And I just think it's unacceptable in 2025 that we're still speaking about communities who don't have access to super fast broadband.
The Scottish Government says over the past decade it has provided more than 1 million faster connections, with £1 billion of investment delivered, including more than £600 million for its R100 programme. But in Falkirk at least, there is dancing in the streets tonight. Chris McLennan, reporting Scotland, Falkirk.
Let's get a roundup of the stories making the BBC News app in Scotland today then, shall we? And a man who killed a father of 7 in a street attack in Aberdeen has been jailed for 7 years. Derek Pearson, who's 47, had denied attacking Stephen Johnson in March 2023, claiming self-defence. Detectives are scaling up their response to a number of deliberate fires in Glasgow. 5 properties have been targeted in what police say could be a gang feud with connections to Edinburgh. And staff at the Cat House nightclub in Glasgow have lodged a grievance over working conditions and health and safety issues. The Unite Union said workers had signed a complaint listing 48 separate issues. Well, for more information on all of these stories, you can scan that QR code on your screen and it will take you straight to the BBC Scotland News app. Now, from starlings to blue tits to tiny little wrens, more than 40,000 Scots have been totalling up the number of garden birds they've spotted in this year's big garden birdwatch, counting close to 750,000 of them. The numbers may seem impressive, but according to the RSPB, the data demonstrates the extent of the damage we've inflicted on our natural world. Well, earlier I spoke to James Sylvie from the organisation and asked him all about the types of birds which had been spotted.
Top of the tree for the 14th year running was the house sparrow, most common bird recorded in UK gardens. And then second for Scotland was the starling, which was great to see. But worryingly, across the UK, we actually saw the lowest numbers of starlings counted since the survey began in 1979. And in Scotland itself, we have seen a decline in the breeding population of this species, about 30% since the 90s. So it just shows, with it being at number 2, just what a great space our gardens are for the species.
Yeah, what do you put that down to then, James? Are there things that you can connect that to, why we are seeing a reduction in the number of particularly starlings?
Well, it's largely down to land use change. You know, our landscapes are getting more intensive, and so there's less space for wildlife. But where our gardens can be really great is where people provide food and shelter, and particularly lawns are great for starlings. Starlings love foraging in lawns, particularly ones that are a little bit messy. So if you can hold off from mowing your lawn every single week and kind of leave it a little bit, that's great for starlings, and you should see the birds coming in.
Are there any other surprises then, James? I'm just wondering, any perhaps species making a bit of a comeback, or species that we're seeing numbers certainly going in the right direction?
Yeah, well, this one was a bit of a tricky one in 2025 because unfortunately the Big Garden Birdwatch landed right in the middle of Storm Eowyn. So a massive thanks to everyone who managed to find a break in the weather for an hour to actually do the survey. And we did see a reduction in birds like blue tit, coal tit, and great tits. And that could be down to the weather, or it could be down to poor breeding last year. If you remember, last spring was really quite cold and wet. So it could be that the birds were struggling to feed their chicks last year. And we won't really know until 2026 when we repeat the survey and see how their numbers have rebounded.
And just briefly, James, what can people do to try and make their gardens a welcoming, inviting place for lots of different types of birds?
So birds, like all wildlife, require three things. They need food, water, and shelter. So food can be through bird feeders, but it can also be natural food. So if you're planting fruit bushes or leave some plants to go to seed, that's great for goldfinches. Shelter can be in the form of bird boxes or trees or shrubs for birds to nest in. And then water can be ponds, or it can be something as simple as a bird bath. If people can do one or all three of those things in their garden, that's going to be great for our garden birds.
James Silvey chatting to me earlier. Well, still to come, we will have the weather with Joy, and we'll be catching up with the volunteers on the Linlithgow Canal as well. But first of all, it's sport time with Lewis. And Lewis, what a weekend ahead. The race for the top six is just going straight to the wire, isn't it?
It certainly is, Amy, and it's so unique as well. Teams that are thinking about European football, but also partly thinking about avoiding getting into a relegation scrap indeed. Hello there, everyone. Well, with one game to go before the Premiership table splits in two, will it be Hearts, St Mirren or Motherwell who complete the top six? Well, here's how the table stands at the moment. Hearts there, as you can see, in the driving seat ahead of their trip to take on Motherwell, who, while St Mirren will be relying on the Steelmen doing them a favour against the Jambos at Fir Park. However, Motherwell in 8th will only be hoping to help themselves, won't they? Because if they can beat Hearts, a top 6 place awaits if St Mirren slip up in their match against Ross County tomorrow.
Psychologically, how the game pans out and how it's played, it's a different scenario. It's not like a normal regular league game that you play every week because of the nature of where the game is placed within the calendar. So it's a bit different. I've never experienced it before, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens.
I don't think they will come here nervous. They have the expectations are perhaps a little bit higher, but we also want points. So hopefully a tough game, hopefully a big challenge, hopefully an interesting game for the spectators, and in the end, the team who reached the top 6 earned it or deserved it.
That's why it's such a big game, because you've got an opportunity to go into the top 6, an opportunity to break 40 points if you don't go into the top 6, but also if you don't, then it's going to be a relegation battle for every team in that bottom 6. So it's something we're looking forward to. We have to embrace, and we're not the ones under pressure. Ourselves and Motherwell, it's a huge bonus to be in the top 6, but it's other teams that are under pressure, not us.
Glasgow Warriors are in Dublin tonight to take on Leinster in the quarter-finals of the Champions Cup. It's rugby's equivalent of the Champions League. And Warriors are looking to reach the last 4 for the first time in their history. But as Andy Burke now reports from Dublin, they go in as big underdogs.
Glasgow Warriors have made a habit of upsetting the odds in recent times, not least on their run to winning the United Rugby Championship title last season. But beating Leinster, this all-star team here in Dublin tonight, represents their biggest challenge yet. And for the Warriors players, it's all about embracing the pressure.
We just need to get our bodies and minds right for Friday night, get all the prep done that we need to get done, and just not get too intimidated by the occasion. We know it's going to be a massive occasion, and as long as we don't try and shy away from it, just embrace it, let it feed what we're going to do, and just go play our rugby.
Well, this would be a tall order at the best of times for Glasgow, but they are seriously under strength this evening, missing a host of key players, the likes of Scotland internationals Hugh Jones, Sione Tuipulotu, Jack Dempsey, Scott Cummings and Xander Fagerson, all through injury, and also the suspended South African back row Henko Venter. So this is not quite mission impossible for Glasgow here in Dublin tonight, but it's not far off it.
Plenty more as well for you on the BBC Sport website, including a look ahead to the Women's Six Nations this weekend. Scotland face Italy at the Hive Stadium, and you can watch coverage of that game on the website and the iPlayer on Sunday. So yes, Amy, a really packed weekend of sport. I know what I'll be doing.
I was going to say, you will not be moving off that sofa watching the golf.
Masters, happy days.
What a turnaround for McIlroy so far.
Incredible, I know. Let's hope McIntyre can follow suit.
Fingers crossed for Bob. Absolutely. Thanks very much, Liz.
Cheers,
now, since 1975, volunteers have been working to rejuvenate what was once a section of industrial waterway that joined Glasgow and Edinburgh. The Linlithgow Union Canal Society are celebrating their 50th anniversary, and members are running weekend boat trips to fund the restoration work. Our reporter Richard Forbes has been to meet them.
For half a century, John has been sailing boats on this stretch of the Union Canal.
I can't see myself as a boat driver why anybody could resist having a trip on a boat. It's just a pleasant way to unwind and relax on the canal. The scenery always changes, you're not static, you're moving along, but it seems to change very, very quietly in a relaxed kind of way. So that's a good thing, I think.
5 decades on the water have taken their toll on one of the older vessels.
We've done a serious survey on the boat to look at how much wear and tear, erosion and all the rest of it has happened over the last 50 years. And we've had external surveyors and we've done ultrasound thickness gauges, and at the end of the day we decided the thing to do was to cut a section out of the floor and have a look at and see what thickness it really was.
This afternoon a plaque was unveiled to mark the 50th anniversary of the Linlithgow Union Canal Society.
Dad, from those very early days back in the 60s, saw the potential that bringing the canal back to life.
Among those sharing their memories was the daughter of Mel Gray, who started the society back in 1975.
So it was a horse-drawn barge, and then that was at the first canal rally that Dad started and held, and then he of course the horse escaped and disappeared right down the street with Dad following it.
Today the society is run by 50 volunteers who aim to pass on their passion for the canal.
Didn't know of the existence of canals until I was a student in the English Midlands, and the campus I was at was close to a canal, and we used to go and watch the boats going through the locks, and that's where it all started.
16-year-old Cameron is one of the youngest volunteers. He signed up as part of his Duke of Edinburgh award.
I used to be cooped up in my bedroom all day, playing video games, not doing anything productive. Then I came down here and just fell in love. I think it's more, I'm outside now, much more, far more active.
It's taken 50 years to restore the canal. The volunteers now hope it will be smooth sailing for the next 50 years. Richard Forbes, reporting Scotland, Linlithgow.
Well, is the sun going to continue? Let's get the forecast now with Joy.
Good evening. Well, it has been another fine and settled day of weather with plenty of warm or hazy sunshine across the country. But for the Northwest Highlands, the Western Isles and the Northern Isles, it's been rather overcast and damp at times. Now tonight we'll see that cloud in the north tending to clear away northwards. For Shetland, however, staying overcast with light rain and drizzle continuing. Elsewhere, it's another dry night under clear skies. Colder too than last night. Temperatures largely holding above freezing, though we could see the odd frost in sheltered spots. Some patches too of mist and sea fog, particularly developing for the likes of Dumfries and Galway, where it could be quite a misty, murky start, but elsewhere once more it will be dry, it will be fine with plenty of early sunshine, but we'll begin to see a change as the day progresses from the west. If we take a look in more detail around about 4 o'clock, actually an improving picture for Shetland, more in the way of brightness developing there, although still feeling in the chilly side there, and particularly for the Western Isles. Elsewhere, more in the way of cloud, with this rain pushing in from the south, reaching the central belt, the east coast, and particularly Dumfries and Galway. in parts of Argyll, and this could be heavy at times. It is going to continue to work its way northwards and eastwards into the evening before another front pushes in from the west, bringing further spells of rain that will sweep across the country. And as we move into Sunday, it is going to be an unsettled field conditions and feeling noticeably cooler too. Initially a wet start for some in more western spots, but actually still plenty of brightness in the east. Good few showers pushing in, and actually these could have a wintry feel on the mountain tops, as it's going to be a noticeably chillier day. As we can see, temperatures only peaking at 9 to 12 Celsius and winds once more beginning to ramp up. As we move into the beginning of next week, however, it's going to feel decidedly unsettled, and indeed we are going to have that chillier airflow with us for a few days. So a wet start for many on Monday, some quite heavy showers, the risk of hail, thunder in the mix too. They are going to continue to move in from the west as the day progresses. Again, wintry in the highest of ground. There will be some bright and sunny intervals, but it is still going to feel on the cooler side. That's your forecast.
Thanks to Joy, and thanks for joining us. Sports Scene is on the way next. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.